Hello, this is the lesson for Monday. We're going to be talking about theme. Now, when we talk about the theme of a story, we are talking about the message that the author is trying to tell us, the moral of the story, or the lesson that we should learn from the story. One thing that some students have a difficult time with is that in general, the theme of the story is not going to be explicitly told to you. In other words, it's not going to say in the second paragraph, the theme of this story is to be nice. So you can't just go back and find the exact words. You have to read the piece, and then you have to think about what should you be learning from this? What's the message the author is trying to get across from us? So we're going to do a little bit of practice here. And the main goal of this video is in case you missed the morning class. However, if you were there and just wanted a reminder, this should help you with that as well. So our first example here is a piece called the recital. That word is recital. Please go ahead and read it as I do. If you haven't already yet, I would encourage you to do so. Kara chose a difficult piece to play for the piano recital. Her teacher advised her to select an easier one, but Kara knew she could do it. Kara practiced every day after school. When her friends called to see if she could play, Kara told them that she couldn't and continued to practice. Even with all that practicing, a week before the recital, Kara still could not play the piece without making mistakes. Kara thought about giving up and switching to an easier piece, but instead, she decided to double her practice time. The night of the recital arrived. Kara was the last student to play. As she walked onto the stage to take her place at the piano, she remembered the long hours she had spent practicing. Kara began to play. Her hands danced across the keyboard. She knew the piece so well. When the final note faded, the room erupted in applause. She had played the piece perfectly. Now, before I go on to talk about the theme, please think about it yourself. What do you think the theme, or the message, or the lesson of that story is? Do you think that the theme is that during a recital, you should always be the last student to play? Because it went well for Kara, and she was the last student to play, therefore the theme is always go last at performances. Hopefully you don't agree with me. I don't think that's correct either. I think that some bits of information in here that we can use to figure out what the theme is. For example, she thought about giving up and switching to an easier piece, but instead she decided to double her practice time. Okay. Let's see. Another bit that I think is really important here is she remembered the long hours she'd spent practicing. She knew the piece so well. She knew she could do it. She continued to practice. So I believe if we look at some of those examples, that the theme of this recital would be to work hard, or you could say really hard, to meet your goals. And since I've underlined all of the evidence I have to support that, I think that means I have a good chance of being right. Now, if you think that you've got theme down, you totally understand this stuff, you can go ahead and give your assignments a try for right now. If you'd like a little bit more information, please keep watching. This next example here is called Kevin's Book Report. And we are still, of course, talking about the theme of a story. So please go ahead and read this on your own as I read it as well. Kevin wasn't worried about his book report. He had 3 whole weeks to get it done. There was no reason to get started right away, especially when he had just gotten a new video game. The next day, Kevin thought about going to the library to pick out a book for his report, but decided to play with his friends instead. He could go to the library on the weekend instead. The weekend came, and rather than going to the library, Kevin spent the whole weekend at his cousin's farm. He didn't go to the library the next week either. There was always something fun to do instead. 2 weeks passed, and Kevin still hadn't picked out a book. By the time he finally got to the library, there was not enough time to read the book and write the report. Kevin tried to write the report without reading the whole book, but it did not go very well. Kevin failed the assignment. Oh, poor Kevin. Now, hopefully you maybe know what the theme of this is already. But if not, that's okay, because we'll talk about it a little bit here as well. But go ahead and, even if you don't have something to write with, at least try to get an idea in your head. What is the message, the moral, or the lesson to be learned from this passage? Now, is the lesson that, well, there wasn't enough time to read the book, so the lesson, the moral of this story is that you should always choose really, really short books for book reports? Nah, I don't think that's it either. Well, let's see if we can find some good examples here. There was always something fun to do instead. That makes sense to me. Let's see. There's no reason to get started right away. The next day he thought about going to the library, but decided to play with his friends instead. The weekend came, and rather than going to the library, he spent the whole weekend at his cousin's farm. 2 weeks passed and Kevin still hadn't picked out a book. I think all of these bits of evidence in this story are really leading me to the theme, which I believe in this story is that you should not procrastinate. In other words, don't put off the things you need to do. Now, I realize I said that in kind of a negative way. We'll say it in another way that's less negative. Don't put off the things you need to do. Another way you could say that would be to get started on your work right away. When you're going through and doing your assignments for today, hopefully that helps. Remember, you can always email your teacher to get more information if you need to. And good luck. Remember, the theme is the message, moral, or lesson to be learned. And by the way, you can find the theme or a theme in some of your favorite movies, maybe some of your favorite TV shows, even cartoons can have a theme to those stories. See if you can find some.